Everyone, would you all please rise? Put your hand over your heart and join us for a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Go off, please roll.
Captain.
Here.
Cavall. Here. Ability.
Here.
Porter.
Here.
Here.
Here. We have minutes of our April 25th regular council meeting. Any changes, corrections, or adjustments in those minutes? Do we have a motion to approve?
Move.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes are passed. Our first visitor tonight is Andrew McKinnon. McKillen and friends. Sorry. It's my pleasure that we're going to appoint Andrew as a full-time police officer. To hear why we're doing this, I'll turn the floor over to the chief to talk about Andrew.
Because we need police officers, good police officers. Andrew came to us from the Gates Mills Police Department where he worked 3 years. Prior to that, Andrew was with the Fairport Harbor Police Department as a special police officer. And just prior to that, for 3 years, he was a police dispatcher with the Madison Township Police Department. Andrew also serves on the drug team with us. So Andrew had the occasion to interview with safety and HR. And HR or safety would like to chime in and have a few words. They're more than welcome to, but we would like to recommend Andrew be appointed for the full-time position.
Safety, will understand.
Safety supports the recommendation of the chief.
And on behalf of HR, we also support the recommendation of the chief and make a motion to mayor to appoint Andrew McKillen as a full-time police officer at South Russell.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Andrew, up here, please. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Andrew McKillen.
I, Andrew McKillen,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and will faithfully,
and faithfully,
honestly,
honestly,
and impartially discharge
and impartially discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of full-time patrolman
of full-time patrolman
in the village of South
in
Russell,
the village of South Russell,
Douglas County, Ohio.
Geauga County, Ohio.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Like to help the picture of your son?
Hurry up, then. Get done.
Yes, you
Thank you very much.
You guys are all coming out. Okay.
Okay, our next two visitors are from the Chagrin Valley Fire Department.
Mayor, just one point of order. I'd like to make a motion that we confirm the mayor's appointment of Officer McKillen to the Village of South Russell Police Department. So moved.
We did that. Chris made the motion.
I second.
That was for the mayor to appoint, not confirming.
Been
Seconded.
moved and seconded, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay. As I said, we have two visitors tonight from the Chagrin Valley Fire Department. And let me check the titles. Captain John McConnell,
Assistant Chief.
Assistant Chief.
Recently promoted.
Congratulations. And Mark, I forget what your title is.
Assistant Chief.
Assistant Chief also, and you are also the Chief Soul, correct? Okay. We have to ask the 6 contributing communities to share in the cost. The cost for the 6 communities would be $300,000. South Russell's share would be a little less than $70,000. Last year, we were asked to sign a non-binding resolution in support of this donation. All 6 communities did sign that, and already this year, 5 of the 6 communities have this donation to the Chagrin Valley Fire Department. So the ball is in South Russell's court. Would you guys like to speak first to make any presentation, or we're prepared? Every council member was asked to bring 2 questions. So,
Chief Dugan asked us to pass his apologies for not coming. We're 2 new lieutenants being sworn in tonight, so we just wanted to pass his regards. And I don't think we have any prepared. We'd like to answer your questions, though.
okay, we will start with Councilman Balicki, who is head of the safety committee, for a question. We're gonna go this way, come to Ruth, then we'll go around the end, then we'll just, if anybody has any extra questions. Dennis, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks for coming tonight, Jess. Hey, the first thing I'd like to have you clarify, maybe this is asking you for a little presentation that you may not have been prepared to give, but first of all, I'd like you to discuss a little bit about the ownership of the building, whose building it is, if it does not belong to the fire department, whose, why, and why have we elected to take this unique approach to funding capital improvements for a building that resides in the community of Chagrin Falls? So if you can talk a little bit about that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's a unique deal, and the deal is that the Village of Chagrin Falls owns the physical fire station. And we as the nonprofit corporation, we occupy it. So every year we occupy the station free of charge for utilities, water, electrical, sewer. We don't pay for any of it. Small example, we just got a new HVAC system on top of the fire station. We didn't pay for it out of nonprofit funds. The reason this benefits everybody is if we were to own the building and to pay for all of those items plus more, off the top of my head, those charges would then be incurred to the 6 communities that we contract with, and our contracts are raised significantly to be able to support those things. So historically, this has benefited everybody pretty easily.
I would just add, this is not the first time that we've done construction at this building site in this manner. So the current building that we're in,
was built with suburban fire department funds, and the building was turned over to the village. And there's actually an agreement that's a prepaid lease in exchange for 25 years of use of the building. So we'd have to lease space if we didn't occupy that building, and that's how we've done in the past. We anticipate extending the lease this time as a result of this construction as well.
So just for clarification, you are asking for public funds from the village of South Russell to improve a building that you occupy that is owned by the municipality of Sherman Falls Village.
So, and I'm not sure if I'm splitting hairs here, what we're discussing is, which was something that was pitched by Mayor Fritz and Council President Crew. What we're discussing is taking revenue from the ambulance building in lieu of tax dollars. Ultimately, it's South Russell's funds, but this is one way of doing it without using tax dollar money. This is ambulance building revenue.
Well, it's somebody's tax dollar. It's the village of South Russell's tax dollar money. It's the village of whoever else is engaged in this particular agreement. But can I ask you why you didn't investigate a bond issue with the village that owns the building? Why you didn't investigate any other sources rather than donations from the individual communities that use your services?
I think all those things were investigated, and we wanted to utilize donations, and the donations were originally from the public. And we weren't coming to the communities. We thought that if we increased the contract costs, those seldom ever go down. You know, when something goes up, it tends to not come down in price. And we didn't think it was wise to raise the price of it now and then try and over a period of time gain those funds to build the building. But rather we would solicit donations from the public, which is what we've been doing for the past 4 years. Some council people approached us from Moreland Hills and Sherman Falls Village and said, you know, is there a way we can help move this ball forward and get this project finished? And this was their proposal that they brought to us and said, what if each community donated approximately the amount that they collect in ambulance building for a year? And so that was their recommendation to do that.
Well, I can understand that, because quite frankly, if, you know, Village of South Russell wanted to revamp a building, whether it was a police department, and I could get buy-in from other communities where I wouldn't have to use our funds, I think it'd be a grand idea as well. But, you know, again, we are using the village's dollars for a donation.
And now, I do want to interrupt you just for a second, because although the building's owned by Sherman Falls, the occupant is us, and we're your fire department.
But you don't have to be our fire department. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We contract with you. And, you know, I understand that you'd like to have a new facility. The other side of the coin might be, is there a degradation in fire services if you remain in the same facility?
And I would just say, we've been your fire department since 1897, with the exception of a few years in the 1980s, and I was a video. Okay.
That's my question.
Sure. The first question I have is, looking at the community funding and escrow agreements that were submitted as part of the packages, and specifically on page 3, there is the reference to payments that will be made for work done at the fire station. So the village of Spring Falls certifies, sends invoices to you guys then send it to the escrow agent pays the invoice, right?
Correct. It's signed off by the fire department, actually by Chief Buchanan, and also the village engineer from Sherman Falls Village.
So does Spring Falls have oversight of the improvements from an architectural point of view, or do you guys?
So my understanding is we have oversight of the fire department portion of the project. And that's why it's pretty explicit that the funds will go into the escrow account, and then we will certify that they were used towards fire department building, not police department building, very separate entities. So that's the oversight, is that we will certify it along with the escrow agent.
Who hires the architect and the contractors?
So it's a process we're going through right now. RSA Architecture, they are in the process of drawing it. It's almost complete. It's something that was, I think, it was taken on by the village, but we agreed to enter into that agreement for that architecture drawing. And we're currently going through, with the village, we had a meeting today, about which direction to go for the building, whether it's to be a cooperative agreement, a management and risk agreement, or going to bid, with the village, but separate.
And I noticed in paragraph 7 on that same page, that once the improvements are done, if there's funds remaining, they go to Chagrin Falls.
So we discussed this today, we kind of saw this question coming, if I'm being completely honest with you, I don't know why that language is in there. Here's the reality, is that, the escrow agreement will be around $300,000, and it's written that that money will be spent first, that before the residents' tax dollar, or the residents' donations. $300,000 towards a $1.6 million project, there will be no leftover funds. I understand that it says that, and I understand it says it be used for the maintenance of the building, but there will not be any leftover escrow money.
The attorney that drafted it wanted to cover all contingencies, but we don't expect to leave.
Which leads to my next question. You're using the escrow account money that the various villages, et cetera, are putting money into. That's the 300,000 reference that's going to be used first.
Mhm.
Why aren't you using the donations first and the 300,000 after that? What was the thought process
I
behind
think
this?
it's gonna all be used. Obviously, it's a $1.6 million project. The $800,000 that we raised and the $300,000 from communities and some grants that we're hoping to get from the county, which are contingent upon all the communities participating. All together will be used, and we'll use all those funds.
We're closer to dealing with using our own corporate funds to finish the project, is closer to the reality of it.
I understand that you plan on spending all the funds to improve the building. But it's, and I understand the thought process of using the municipal money first, but if I were a donor and at the end of the project, the assistant chief, you came and say, thanks for giving us money, but we didn't need yours, here's your $5,000 back.
So they donated to the capital improvement campaign, which is what we launched 4 years ago, but we put multiple announcements out, social media posts, the mailers that we did. What they donated to was the Chagrin Falls Charitable Firemen's Foundation. And what that foundation is to be used towards this building project. And then if there were any leftover funds, a small example, it would be used to fund somebody, a firefighter gets hurt, it would help their family in time of need. They would paint their house if they need to paint their house if they're injured, just a small example.
But there won't be funds for both. We're striving to try and get the last amount of funds together, so. I'm sure you, the bids initially, the first several sets of bids that went out for contractors were way more than what we've been able to raise. So, we're at the point now where we scale the project to the size that we think we can afford, but we plan to be funds left over.
And the fire department is going to be watching this, expenditures of these funds, the completion of the work that's done properly.
Yeah, it's our home. It's the station for our apparatus. We're gonna be watching it. We'll have 60 inspectors there every day.
Councilman Kent.
Thank you, Mayor. Gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. My question has already been asked. I'm going to ask it again, and I appreciate, if possible, an in-depth answer. During the initial session, when all this was being planned, did the idea of floating a bond?
Yeah, I know that Chagrin Falls Village discussed, so I don't know how much investigation was done, but they did discuss doing a bond. I'm not on village council, I'm not part of that discussion, so I'm not sure.
Isn't this a normal avenue that municipalities take, sort of bonds?
Well, to be honest, the very first discussion of this station was about donations, individual private donations to raise money for the building. And that's how the project started for the first year and a half of it, before there was any discussion of public funds.
I yield. Thank you.
Councilman Berger.
Thank you, gentlemen. My question is a hypothetical. We're excited about providing $70,000 to you for your project. If we were to say to you that we would like it to be as part of a contract as opposed to a donation, part of the next contract that we write with you included prepaid upfront in full, is that something that you would be willing to do?
I'm not sure I understand what was.
As opposed to a donation, it would be included in the contract, either as an expense, an addition to the contractual amount, however it would get structured. But it would be part of an ongoing contract between South Russell and the Chinook Valley Fire Department. Is that something you would be willing to look at?
Absolutely willing to look at it. The current agreement, I think, requires all communities to fund it by July. So I'm not sure what other communities feel about that, but you're not interested.
I'm just suggesting that our contract is up December 31st. If we were to sit down and write a new contract that we had in place by July 1st, which called for the village to make a $70,000 payment to you as part of that agreement, getting around the issue of the donation, would you be willing to look at that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Councilman Bill.
In the proposed agreement here, there are 5 bulleted action items for construction needs of the community or the fire department. And you mentioned the bids are coming a little higher and you have to cut things. Of the things you're cutting, are any of those 5 that are written, 5 items that are written in our agreement being cut?
Just double checking the 5 items. No.
What was that question again?
So there are 5 items in the proposal. You mentioned that the bids are coming in higher, that they cut some things as a result, so they can afford it. I want to make sure that the 5 items that are in the agreement are, none of them are being cut out.
Right, Councilman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I refresh me again, is this Mark Better?
Yes.
And that, tell me this.
John Catani. John Catani.
Okay, it's like Catania, Pennsylvania?
No.
No,
Good time.
it's okay, got it, okay, got it, sorry. I was on council years ago, from 95 to 2000, and I know in 2000, we were paying $11,000 a month for fire service. So now we're up to, I think it's 34.6 or 34.9.
35,000.
I want you to just give me a couple of sentences why that would go up more than 200% in those, 2 decades roughly. So tell me why.
So in that time frame, we staffed the fire station with 2 people, 24/7, and now we staff the fire station with 4 people, 24/7. So given 90% of our costs are personnel, that is no doubt double, and given inflation over the years and cost to upkeep the station and equipment, that's why the costs have increased.
There was a big, this isn't a question for me, there was a great big, remodel, if you will, in 1990. Is that no longer, that's what's being redone now?
Yes, yeah, because as anything, as your private finances have changed over since 1990, certainly the fire department's cost of doing business has gone up as well. And the building that was built in the 1990s, we didn't have very none of the department than we do now, so there wasn't much accommodation for that. In order to maintain the staffing of 4 people 24/7, we've gone from what was less than probably close to 40-some people to 60-some people in the department. In order to fill that 24/7 staffing of part-timers, and that's what's helping keep your costs down. But that means having lockers for them, having places for them to put their equipment and things. So in that manner, the station, just our needs at the station have changed.
So you get calls that justify that having 4 people there every night, you get calls every single night?
So I was just about to add that since 1990, our calls almost tripled, so, yeah.
We're up about 1,600 calls a year now.
All right. Are we going around again?
Yeah. Dennis, round two.
Okay, I'm intrigued by your comment about the contribution from Cuyahoga County. And, you know, I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, how much that contribution is, what's the source of those funds, i.e., I've heard that, you know, that would be part of gambling profits from the Cuyahoga County Casino that's apportioned to all Cuyahoga County communities. And, you know, the other thing is that, you know, why is it contingent on contributions from Geauga County municipalities for Cuyahoga County to participate in funding, helping to fund?
I'm not sure the Geauga County portion of that is correct. I'm not sure it's contingent upon that.
You just said it was,
Well, I know it's contingent.
in accordance with the agreement.
It's contingent upon us being able to raise the funds to put the building up, to do the complete job of it, which depended on all these different buckets of funds coming together. It did depend on, I know Cuyahoga County's Department's participating. I'm not sure.
That's why it was awarded, was because we had all of our communities had some skin in the game initially.
It, by the way, is economic development funds, it's not casino funding. And it's not, at this point, I don't think it's still guaranteed.
We don't have the money in it.
Well, what is the latest status of that? Are you not gonna get the funds from Cuyahoga County? Is it contingent on other participation by the community? I mean, what is the status of their contribution?
We are fully expecting that money. We haven't heard any issue with it. But we also don't know the ramifications of one of our communities backing out.
Who's leading that liaison with Cuyahoga County?
You know that I don't. I mean, from us, it's our fire chief, Greg Zuda, but I'm not sure from the county.
So the fire chief is negotiating with Cuyahoga County to obtain these funds.
Negotiating, I'd say more requested grant money.
We must make a presentation, yeah.
So it's a grant.
Yes.
Is it a matching funds grant?
No.
Okay. You know, let's talk financial oversight, okay? You're asking participating communities to engage in contributing to this project, and really, those individual communities have no financial oversight in any way, shape, or form with respect to how the money's being spent or whatever. And I understand there may not be any financial oversight from any municipality. Can you talk about that?
So I've thought about this, and the way that I see it is you trust us as your fire department with a $1.6 million budget every year to cover the citizens for fire and EMS. You also trust us with the citizens' lives here in South Russell. So the oversight in that is included in our contracts, which I think is another point that she brought up. Anytime you'd like to discuss the safety committee, you, the representatives of the village, are welcome to call a meeting, and we would be more than happy to sit down and discuss whatever the issue may be. But when it comes to the construction project, you are entrusting us with the $70,000 portion of your contribution towards the building fund, and we're also hoping that you would trust us to complete the project.
Let's talk a little bit about that reference that you made to the safety committee, okay? And I believe, you know, maybe I misconstrued something that the mayor shared with council earlier in that, you know, all the municipalities are a member of this safety committee. Whose safety committee? We've never been invited to participate, nor do we have any representative to a Chagrin Falls safety committee. So please explain that.
So it's the Suburban Corporation Safety Committee, and I believe it's the last paragraph of your contract. At any time, you may request a meeting, and we will gladly show up and discuss anything you'd like. I know Mayor Cruz has taken advantage of that in the past. And I know that historically, maybe even before my time, we've tried to organize a regular one, but there was no attendance, no interest in really discussing any active problems. So
I think the actual correct term is advisory committee to the suburban fire department. It's appointed by council. It's actually part of the contract. They have to appoint a member of the advisory committee, one from each community. I'm not sure who's exactly on your 1920 or 2020 contract, but we meet usually when there's questions.
So right now, you have no oversight of your funds and expenditures by any municipality that you contract with.
No, we're a nonprofit corporation.
You only have the internal audit.
Correct.
From an agency that you contract with for audit purposes, correct?
I wouldn't turn in an audit, but yeah, there's oversight from Ebert Holmes County here in South Russell. It's a contract with the review our books annually. We have been audited twice by the Bureau of Workers' Comp, but that's the extent of it.
They do all work county. But also part of the contract is you're welcome to review our books at any time. They're always open by appointment, so if there's an interest in someone taking a look at it, you're welcome. You guys want to move it forward?
I don't have another question.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I never thought I'd quote Ronald Reagan, but you mentioned trust several times, and I do believe in trust but verify. Okay? In my opinion, there should be an oversight. If you're asking 6 municipalities to offer funds, and I understand every municipality should ask for skin in the game, no question about that. But you would think there would be an oversight committee with a member from each community that would work with you very closely to see this carried out.
So I'm interested in this because I think it might be something we're interested in doing. What will be the role of this oversight committee?
Well, when I give somebody $70,000, I like to know how to spend it, and I would appreciate to have seen it.
So what we spend on construction, part of the agreement is that you have an escrow agent that's looking out for your interest in this. And then signing off on the fact that the construction's actually been completed, that they've received invoices in, and that those invoices match up with some completion, as been said by the village engineer and by the suburban department, who's gonna occupy the building, that this portion of it's complete.
I'm just gonna keep an eye on the agents.
On the what, Jim?
The agents, who's gonna keep an eye on the agents?
So, it sounds like maybe one representative from each community would be someone from council, would that be the best structure for it?
That's a possibility, it's not a possibility.
I think the advisory committee might be a great, use of that group. I mean, I think that might have merit to it.
We don't have a problem with it.
That's all I have.
That'd be your council appointed advisory committee.
Councilman Burger.
I failed to mention the first time, thank you for coming out first and foremost. Question, is this the first campaign of this type that the Firemen's Association has done for capital campaign?
For capital, yeah.
Yeah.
And do you foresee another repeat for this in the next 10, 15 years for a similar campaign?
There may be a need for, I don't know about 10 or 15 years, but at some point in the future, I can see a need for additional modifications of building certain things. I don't think we'll ever do a campaign this way. This has been 4 years of an amazing amount of work that was never anticipated. We thought we'd raise enough funds to do the project that we wanted to do our first year. Didn't happen, since it's drug out to now 4 years. The end is in sight. I think we have enough funding from enough different sources that we're gonna get it done. And I think it's gonna be a great addition to our facilities. But I don't think any of us are ready to take on the amount of work that's necessary to do this. With the exception of fire chief, this is none of our full-time jobs. I'm the fire chief in the city of Solon. He works with Lakewood Fire. This is just part-time stuff that we're very, very, very engaged in. But it's additional tasks that take us away from our families and things, and I don't think we would engage in this type of a donation fundraising campaign. I think we're a little naive.
But I think that our hearts are in the right places. I think we're trying to do this without burdening the citizens or forcing any costs down their throat. But I also think we can comfortably say that we don't see another project coming in the next 10 to 15 years, which is the question. So,
Okay. You're pretty landlocked there, so I wasn't sure.
I don't know if the next one would be.
I agree with that.
Okay, so to expand on Chris Berger's first time, instead of donation, build it into the cost of the contract. So I did a little bit of math. It would be $1,950 extra per month if you took the $70,000 over a 3-year contract. Would that be something you think of, and is that kind of where you were going with
Yeah,
that, Chris?
exactly, but we would prepay it. we would prepay the 70,000 with some, obviously,
Different language.
with some contingencies that, you know, we kept the relationship for 3 years, which we would hope we would, but if it didn't, there would be some clawback. I would think that would make sense from a financial standpoint. But I'm not looking to hold you up, okay? You need the 70,000, you wanna do the project, we wanna see you get it done. We just wanna do it in a way that makes fiscal sense for the residents of Southwest. And that's why I proposed that it be part of the contract. Or, I threw out the hypothetical, whether we get there or not, that's another story.
Just the last comment, we got the invitations in the mail. Was that from you guys to come to a $325 per person fundraiser?
It is, yes.
I'm not sure who up here on this council thing, I can't possibly afford that, and it really negates the little guy. You know, as a kid of a dad who always went to the, men's only, what are they, the fire department, the clinic, yeah, he came away great, shotguns.
Those haven't been men's only for many, many years.
I know that, yeah,
Decades, it has not been.
I know it's a lot of work, but I like one for the regular people, something for the regular people. to feel
Sure, so this was a citizens group that came and volunteered to assist us in fundraising. And they've been working on this for literally 4 years, the kind of final fundraising part of it. So those prices were set by them, it wasn't set by us. That group has put together some obviously expensive tables that they have sold. And I think they're gonna raise quite a bit of money with it. I hope that they do. But I would say it's a little rich for my taste.
I called Bill Phillips when I got that thing, that was me. I thought, why are you even sending this to me? All right, that's it, thanks
And
guys.
our hope is to raise a lot of money.
Are there other questions?
Yeah, I have one question, you know, and this goes back to the first question I had about ownership of the building. Now, you indicated that Schuren Falls owns the building, but yet I think there's verbiage in your proposed agreement / contract where at the end of the project, you're giving the building to Schuren Falls for $1. But I didn't see anything where it transfers to you during the construction. So I think, you know, I don't know if anybody legally has reviewed the contract from you guys or, you know, whether that was just a cursory, you know, yeah, sounds good to me. But, you know, can you explain that verbiage in the contract?
Have a feel just the law to put the agreement together. I think in all the communities reviewed it, no one had any questions from the legal department from the villages, right? Is that right?
We haven't, I haven't reviewed the full document.
I know that Lisa Mack sent it out to each of the communities asking if there were any questions and sent a couple of follow-up emails on that if there were questions regarding the legal contract, please follow up on that. So as far as legally looking at it, I know that was, opportunity was provided.
Did you receive that correspondence, Cecily? Because I know council didn't see any correspondence asking if there were any legal questions. We were just presented with a contract saying, here it is, sign it.
Okay, and we'll forward those emails because I have copies of them, so.
What are we talking about? It's not, sent or not sent.
I think the question I understood it was, did any attorneys look at this contract? So yes, it was developed by attorneys and it was sent out to a lot of departments, or sent out to each of the villages. And my assumption was, and the email I saw was that all 4 village, or all 5 actually,
Villages were on
5 or 6, but all the villages.
Everybody sent themselves, Russell, was signed on. You did receive the community funding in escrow agreement
I did,
and the exhibit A.
But in those documents, there is the verbiage that at the conclusion of the project, that the fire department will basically sell the village, or the village of Schuren Falls, the building for $1, turn it over for $1. But I didn't see anything that turned the building over to the fire department in the first place. So I was a little bit confused about that, given the fact that I thought that the village owned the building anyway. So it was just some unusual
Would you be
word.
able to show us where it talks about $1?
I remember that.
Yeah.
Like, that's,
I don't believe there's a dollar involved, but the building ownership does turn over to the village of Sugar Falls. And
Well-
it's the construction of the addition and renovation.
and it may not be the
That's being
dollar,
turned over to the village.
but the issue is, if the village of Sugar Falls owns the building in the first place, why is it being turned over to the village of Sugar Falls?
The renovation is, not, we don't own the building, so we can't, the title's not transferred to us for new construction, but the renovation work that is being paid for with suburban funds is then being donated to the village of Sugar Falls.
In other words, that the improvements were going to be turned over.
Correct.
Well,
That was then done in the building, but not the building itself.
Correct.
and the actual wording is, the fire department upon final completion of the improvements shall transfer ownership of the fire station to the village of Sheeran Falls. The village of Sheeran Falls, upon acceptance of the fire station, which they already own, shall maintain the fire station as its sole expense for the life of the building, including all maintenance and operation costs.
Right.
So that's the actual verbiage. But I didn't see anything prior to that which indicated that anything was being turned over to the fire department. Which then would say.
We don't now and have never owned the building, you're correct.
So, it's transferring ownership back to the village.
Of the improvements. I don't disagree with you that that's poorly phrased, but that's what's intended.
Councilman Zell.
Two council people here mentioned an alternative method of building into a future contract as opposed to a straight donation. If that was agreeable between both parties, I believe that would be done by, say, June 30th. We need the funds by July, is that correct? Is it realistically feasible to agree to a contract, let alone with these funds in there, a new contract by July 1?
I would say it would depend on the motivation of council. If we were going to do that, how quickly we can move that.
Are you asking if we are able to project our next 3 years by July 1st?
Yes.
What that button?
I think they're asking if we would have our next 3 years prepared by July 1st with that party.
I engineered it, the councilman looked at it in July, I don't think I said July 1st, but. I mean, we will.
We base the next 3 years on the numbers for this year,
We base the contract on the previous 3 years.
which is 3 years, which includes this year.
Doesn't have to, it's on 3 years of activity. That could be in your favor, could be not in your favor, depends on what year it is.
Other questions?
This water.
Any questions?
No, I think I echo, the concern right off the bat, is, private residence donation, not an issue, right? For municipalities such as ourselves, that's a challenge, right? So whether it's a prepaid expense, as Councilman Berger suggested, or a forgivable loan, which is a way we've dealt with some Great Falls building in the past, that the founders do. That would, I would imagine, be preferable for everybody, than donation, which is, I think has a challenge.
Great, any other comments? All right, in about 20 minutes and a half hour, we will have our safety committee meeting. At that point, I will be looking for a motion to allow the mayor to sign the escrow agreement. I will text you, let you know what we're gonna do.
Right.
You feel free to stay if you'd like.
I'd like to correct the mayor, we will not be having a safety committee meeting. So,
Let's see.
so we will have a safety committee report, but not a meeting.
Do you feel that there will be other questions that may arise that would necessitate our remaining?
I doubt it.
It would be a benefit to us, say.
You can see the decision firsthand if you'd like.
I just want to make sure there's additional questions that were available, but there's no idea.
These are fire.
Hopefully not.
Moving along. We also have a visitor tonight, is Patrick Polk. Patrick, would you like to speak?
I do.
All right, if you do, let me remind you how we do this. You get 5 minutes. After 3 minutes, I'll stick up 2 fingers to remind you that if you're running out of time, when you're finished, council may speak or they may not. So you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll use as much time as I may consume. My name is Patrick Holtz. I live at 31 Garden Park Drive in Lake Louise. The question I have for council is, what is the policy for village lot ingress and egress to 306 during the farmer's market? Before I begin, I want to read into the record for your minutes an email from today at 1:42 from Chief Rizzo to me and the mayor. Good morning, Mr. Holtz. I received your email from this weekend and would like to offer some guidance to your list of concerns listed below. Number one, the Sleepy Rooster parking lot is 100% full at the turnaround. It's my understanding, and there is no report suggesting otherwise, that ingress and egress of the plaza is not obstructed during the hours of the farmer's market. If you have an arrangement with the plaza property owner for your customers to park in the plaza lot, any issue regarding that would be between you and the plaza owner. Number two, what is your guidance to our customers on a vital revenue day who are coming to the gallery from Bell or 306? And is this your policy every Saturday? Finding an alternative route to your destination is not practical. Use common sense when determining a safe place to reroute. There are other places for anyone heading south on 306 to ingress and egress to head north on 306, like the village cemetery. Meanwhile, our lot cannot be tested to be used for the farmer's market, which I'm witnessing as I write this. This needs to be communicated. We have events and classes. The village will remind the Geauga Fresh Farmers Market that they cannot let anyone park in the MC Studio parking lot. Feel free to reach out directly to Geauga Fresh Farmer Market to relay the same. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me directly. Respectfully, Chief Michael Russo. That was an email from today. So the question I have for council is a basic policy question. What is the policy for ingress and egress to 306 during the farmer's market? This was habit and custom during the farmer's market, but you've made the loathsome decision to put a no left-hand turn sign into the only private property to your neighbor for 40 years. And so because of that decision to put the no left-hand turn sign, it also means that the folks from Bell coming from Chagrin have to make a decision how they get to our gallery on Saturdays. What was already substantially curtailed is curtailed even further because of the decision that you've got that blocks off 306. So we need to adapt to that. We need to know what the policy is from the village for the farmer's market between the hours of 9 and 12. Left-hand turn sign, cancel the law in your own ordinances. And I'm in the mood to say no when, because of that bad policy decision that you've made, that a solution is to do a turnaround at the cemetery. I live in Lake Louise. My house overlooks the lake. The Ottens lived in that house, Ed Otten and Mrs. Otten. Mrs. Otten had beautiful roses. Ed resides there. I'm not directing anyone to the cemetery. At some point, enough is enough. There's some things that are just beyond the pale. I will not do that. I will say no. I'm also going to say no to your no left-hand turn sign. My family moved here in 1980. There was nothing here. It was a Sohio station, an Augie's, and my dad's office. That was healthcare in South Russell. And they brought with them doctors from the Cleveland Clinic that then resided next to my dad. My dad on Saturdays, and the one thing I find so fascinating about this on Saturdays, it's little hours between, it's just 9 and 12. It's the same hours on Saturdays when I grew up. There's a very good chance or possibility that my dad would be pulled away from a CYO basketball game or a baseball game to make sure that the chief folks were taken care of. And there's nothing that gave him greater pleasure in the world to do that. He was a wonderful neighbor. My dad then also,
I would like to make a motion to have Mr. Holtz an extra 5 minutes.
Second.
Thank you. And
Just hold on.
And I'll
I'm gonna
just,
give you 5 more minutes. You don't need to vote on it, just.
I won't use the balance of that time. My dad was, like I said, he was the dentist here since 1980, till when he retired, just a couple of years ago. My mom, you might have known, Carol Holtz, was the office manager here. We have memories of what was oftentimes a antagonistic relationship with the village, where we might have put on a good front, but for all intents and purposes, they wanted that property. And one person that my mom and dad would often go to for counsel, as they were just a young couple, was Nancy Gallagher, who was the clerk there in Southwest. My mom and dad have rested in those friendships that they had. And in the last year and a half, we're just, I can't tell you how much we've grown. And we're just in the process of starting to say no. My dad, when he retired, it was very, very important to make sure that the practice was given to another young dentist, and he gave it to Brian. And he was very excited about it. And then after Brian moved on to move to a facility that was larger than his, that space was open. My wife, Carlene, moved from Burton to that space in the midst of California. My wife in Burton had a child care facility that had over 100 kids. And the whole premise of her curriculum was an art-based curriculum. We had to retrofit that business in the midst of California, because we had a stay-at-home mother. And we wanted to come home. Southwest was our home. And so we moved to that space that was open so that Carr can have a brand new preschool that was retrofitted to COVID, that was art-based, intended to the needs of our most vulnerable people, our children. And also art classes for elderly in the afternoons in the municipality. And then next to that is the art gallery, where Jaga artists, we have 60, and we had 60 artists from Jaga County, that was their home. And you put the no left-hand turn sign there. This is your only neighbor for 4 years. Absent the law, absent any policy. And I'm gonna start to say no. Tonight I'm saying no. I'm saying no about the left-hand turn sign. I'm saying no to the cemetery as a turnaround. And I ask you the basic question of policy. What is the policy for ingress and egress to 306 in the farmer's market? And then also the basic premise, the council must get greater control and oversight of the farmer's market. This was a question a year and a half ago, and it remains a question today. And as onerous as it is, and I believe it is onerous, we'll follow your guidance and we'll adapt to that. But I need to know from in terms of predictability, if you block that off, you have to understand, you already have a no left-hand turn sign that we have to ask folks to follow the law, regardless if it's lawful. And yeah, I give it bounce my time. Thank you.
Your first question,
I don't have a question, but I'm witness.
you had a question though. What is our policy on the exiting during the farmer's market? There is no policy.
That's right, there is no policy.
We simply block off this exit that heads to 306 for the safety of the people coming in. We've been doing that for the past year. We started it again this year.
So there's a no left-hand turn sign too, sir.
No.
And so my question is, what should I communicate to our customers? And if anyone could possibly get to our property, besides helipad, what should we communicate to them to get there?
I would go,
If they were to turn around, where do they turn around, sir?
I would go down right to
To the cemetery
the
or
market.
shame?
Go to the market.
Excuse me?
Go to the market. There's
Which market?
farmer, okay, I call it the farmer's market parking lot. There is a mailbox there. You pull in, you turn around, you can be heading north on 306.
I will await the email for you to put together that I will defer, because right now I will post what Chief Rizzo has put together. I think it's onerous. And in 22 years in public policy, it's besides the no left turn sign, the idea of a turnaround in the cemetery is about the worst idea I've heard. But if you have a formal policy that's supported by council, by all means send it.
No, I have a formal policy on that one.
What should I communicate?
Saturday morning.
What should I communicate?
I would
What's
say
the turnaround?
your turnaround, I guess I'd say it's up to your customers to find a way to turn around. You can go to the plaza, you can go to the cemetery, you can cut through the bank, that is up to your customers to figure out. As far as what we do on Saturday mornings, which was your question, we keep that blocked off for safety. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Off to the mayor's report. First thing on the mayor's report is approval of the parking dam meeting, and they don't need to use the facility. So they're other things in the mayor's report, there were two requests to use the pavilion. One of them involved an ice cream truck, the other one's got about 60 Cub Scouts. Were there any issues with that?
No.
Okay, any other questions? What was in the mayor's report? Hearing none, we'll move on to the fiscal officer.
I distributed my report to Mayor and Council, I don't have any questions. And I did want to just let everybody know, we actually had our first scattering in the scattering garden on Friday. So that was the first one, and I thought,
Sure.
that's all I have.
Okay, questions of our fiscal officer?
The only one I get in, and I don't know if you want to talk about it now, it was about the new computer and the foreign exchange fee, et cetera.
Yeah.
Is that solved?
It is solid, I just want to be aware when you guys approve the credit card report, if you approve it, fine, and if not, then make a motion.
Other questions of the fiscal officer?
You know, just an observation, every month this year in 2022, our income tax collection net has been well above every other month in prior years. I noticed in your report, there may be a way to attribute that to people who are working from home, so they're paying more tax to the village rather than Cleveland or Shaker or somewhere else. Does the association see that continuing?
We do see it continuing, it seems like the bedroom communities are getting more because those are the workers that are now working from home. And then your cities that have the businesses, they're seeing a significant loss. Mayfield Village has 57% loss from what they used to be because they have the progressive insurance. So, I think we'll have a better idea this year, probably around June, so we'll get those collections in July. And then, again, next year, we might be able to get the full picture of it all, because right now, a lot of people, and I know some people personally who are like, I'm not going to figure out what I owe Southwest, so you know, need to get a refund from another community, but now everybody's required to track what city they're working in. So the feeling is next year, people are already gonna have it tracked, so we may get more, those communities, you know, like the regions, that they may be losing more, we may get more. It's gonna be another year before we see the true impact, but it looks like our revenues have increased and will stay that way. Maybe, as far as I know.
Other questions of the fiscal
Yeah,
officer?
I did have one more. In your report, Danielle, on the bottom of page 2, we talked about this at our HR meeting, was, we're still looking for an administrative helper for Ruth Griswold. We did hire Leslie to work here at the village, saying that she was needed here. And so I'm not in favor of her working the 2 half days per week in the building department.
Other questions of the fiscal officer?
Yeah, I have a question on the part-time and overtime report. For patrolman Clement. You work 10 hours, is that truly overtime?
Officer Frank, yeah.
Okay, okay. So is overtime paid at a regular rate or is it?
No, well, what happened was because of our policy that says it has to be time worked in a week, not time paid. So he worked those 10 hours because he came in.
He was on vacation.
He was on vacation.
Okay, so it's paid at the regular rate.
Straight time.
Okay.
And he knew that before he came in.
Okay, so it truly wasn't overtime.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Adam, fiscal auditor, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully in front of you, you all have a copy of my report from the month of April 30th, 2022. On page 1, we list the fund balances, which you will see add up to $3.889 million. Below the bottom, you can see where that money is. Huntington, Star Ohio, interest rates, I had to this morning, increased to 0.41%. I expect it to keep increasing. I want to point out while looking at page 1 that these fund balances, which were arrived at independently, match the fund balances that y'all listed that are cash transactions at work today. On page 2, you'll notice that another big swing in our fund balances from the beginning of April to the end. In fact, I don't think I recall being so close to being the same. $863 reduction. Revenues, you'll see those below. No real standouts. Cemetery has been a lot busier than in prior years, for sure. We get our homestead rollback funds, are always rolled in. And then, you'll see that we're right on pace in a lot of funds, so nothing really of note for April in terms of revenue or expenses. Any questions for me?
Have you ever seen as Mark mentioned, 4 straight months of record income tax income?
It's going quite well, to be at this point in the year. I mean, it's always hard to tell how it's gonna end up, but yeah, it's going quite well. One thing I just thought is, the village investment committee, solicitor, Aaron, myself, we should get together, relatively soon. The 1-year treasury rate's 2%, we're getting 0.46%. Even some funds to be invested would be a big boost, so, I don't know, maybe ahead of like the June meeting or something, we could meet, great. I don't know if you're sure to go like it.
Good idea.
We have it like 6
Solicitor June 13th, 6 o'clock.
or 6:30 even, maybe it's
We
out.
have public next.
Next meetings.
So what are the 13th?
Will be at 6 o'clock.
Awesome.
Thank you, Evan. All right, the next question is of our fiscal auditor. All right, we are now at the finance committee.
Okay, Finance Committee met today at 9:00 a.m. at the Village Hall. As a result of today's meeting, the committee minutes will be contained in the next council package. The next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for 15th of June. Before I introduce a couple of motions as reflected on the agenda, I would like the fiscal officer to address the sugar bush issues that you brought up at the Finance Committee meeting today, Danielle. In terms of the agreement and how much we're actually paying and what the actual cost will be.
If you recall, in 2020, Sugar Bush came and asked for us to assist them with getting their pond dredged. And then last year they came back that, so originally council approved up to $6,500. Last year they said, came forward and said they didn't get it done yet, but it's going to be more expensive. So council did approve not more than $10,500. So now we did get a bill from Mr. Fletcher, so he was the one who contracted this meeting. So the total of the bill is $16,930. So I wanted to know, I don't know what is your agreement, are you paying 10.5 or half? What is that, first of all? And then the second part is, in hindsight, council agreed to pay this, but perhaps we should have them get pre-estimates, because it's my understanding from the school district, most likely could have got this done for about half the price. So we didn't ask them to get 3 bids. So they figured out what they got, and the bid total was $16,930. So I need to know what you're approving, 10.5 for passed, because the way the motion was passed, it was not more than 10.5.
You know, I think it was our initial understanding as council that we were gonna split the cost 50-50 with the community. So, you know, and at their request, you know, and their concern for increased costs, we said we would go up to that magic number, but we didn't agree to that number as, here's what we'll contribute. So, you know, my understanding and my proposal to council would be that we split the cost 50-50 with the Sugar Bush community.
You want to make a motion?
Yeah, I just wanted to have the discussion first before I entertain those motions and have Danielle explain the situation that came up with finance today.
And I think, let me understand this, because it didn't happen when I was on council. Sugar Bush felt that the village contributed to their problem and therefore needed to be addressed. Is that a correct statement?
I would say so. We agreed that the 2014 road program had a severe storm, and we felt that we contributed to the silt in their silt pond. And last year we agreed that it was, I thought we always said split the cost with them, 50-50.
And my recollection was also that the engineer indicated that the village had at least some responsibility for this as well.
Correct, we were in the midst of replacing the culvert that went across Bell Road, and everything was open. There was no culvert there, and we were neck down, half of the culvert was missing, and we got an incredibly intense rain event that washed a pile of soil, a pile of gravel, if I recall, as well as just eroded all around the half a culvert that was there, and it all ended up in Sugar Bush.
And since we were at least in part responsible, that's why the discussion took place about splitting it with Sugar Bush.
Can I ask the motion when they passed it said, you can be paid upon successful inspection by you? Have you inspected that?
I have not inspected it.
Could you?
I could, certainly, I'd be happy to. Thanks.
Okay, so the motion is?
Any other discussion? Okay. So the first motion that I propose is that I'd like to make a motion to acknowledge receipt and review of the 9 May 2022 credit card report. So,
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed.
second motion that I'd like to entertain with council is I'd like to make a motion to approve a 50% expense payment to Sugar Bush for silt pond dredging upon certification by the village engineer that the work was satisfactorily completed. So,
Second.
What's the amount on that?
$8,000,
Divide by two.
$8,465.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed.
No, I'm opposed.
Opposed, okay. Vote was 5-1. All right, Dennis, the floor is yours.
all right, that concludes the finance committee.
Fund balance.
The fund balances come, let's see. I'd like to make a further motion that we approve the fund balances. So,
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye. Opposed. Questions of the finance committee?
Mayor, if I can add one comment to that. In this morning's meeting, we talked about reserve funds. And that we would begin with 2 reserve funds, setting them up, doing the paperwork, working with the county auditor to make sure that we were doing them right. Those reserve funds would be for the Bell Road project.
The big trucks and
Okay, so, and then setting up a fund for the big trucks. In anticipation of that, the plow trucks, I asked the street commissioner when the next plow truck is due. I thought it was due next year, and I'm in the area, it's due
2026.
2026, so we have 4 years to create a reserve fund, to keep putting money in to making that happen. What is due before then, the backhoe is due in 2023?
Correct.
Okay, and the one-ton truck is due in 2023. In addition, we have the wheel loader that isn't due to be replaced, but we consistently said is not appropriately sized for the projects that we want to do, so that might be something else to add into the reserve fund.
So the one other thing, Chris, that we did discuss, I don't know if we want to establish it as well, is a fund for funding the restrooms for the park.
Right, that was another potential option, but we said we'd start with these first two reserve funds and then build from there as we understand the process.
So this reserve fund is for street equipment, or are we gonna say particular truck?
Well, no, we're gonna say specific.
It's coming.
It's gonna be a plow truck, it's gonna be a one-ton truck. They're going, leaving them as just saying, street vehicles or equipment or whatever is too nebulous. I think we need to identify this specifically.
All right, anything else from the finance committee?
Nothing to report.
Questions of the finance committee? Solicitor?
The only thing I have to report is that, with respect to the bid that went out for the central detention basin, there was an addendum that was issued today online regarding ARPA funding and specifics for ARPA. And so, but I don't think that's going to change anything. There's already bidders that have taken out the actual package, and I believe they've all been notified, so, I understand the bid opening is this.
Right.
So, that's all I have to report.
Thank you. Questions of the solicitor? Engineer, you're up.
The solicitor, thank you, Mayor. The solicitor stole my thunder. We are out to bid for both the Manor Brook stream restoration project and the central retention basin project. The bid opening is this Friday the bid openings are this Friday at noon and 12:30 respectively. And we have a host of interested bidders, interested plan holders. I'm optimistic we'll have some good competitive bids and some good prices. I look forward to that opening this Friday.
Questions of our engineer?
Not that you're not busy enough, but give a traffic light update.
No, but I can get you one.
That sounds good.
I will get you one. I know when we had our discussion, when the plans were at stage one completion, all our survey data was laid out, our draft plan sheets were together. We had a really productive discussion on that. I will follow up with our designers to find out where we're at. If I had to guess, I'd say we're probably about 50%, maybe better.
Eric, you come in on Van Kuren and the clearing of the 319 and the central retention area.
Sure can. I have been in constant contact with Van Kuren, land clearing, and they did us a big favor by coming in and getting the trees cut down before our clearing deadline. The latest word I have from Van Kuren is that within the next 2 weeks, they should be remobilized to basically clean everything up and get it ready for our construction projects that'll be opening on Friday. So we're good on that as far as timeline goes. I will keep on them and update Streets Committee report.
So presumably Van Kuren will be done well in advance of.
At the actual construction work? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Other questions of our engineer? Hey, a compliment to you. I met with the county engineer and Shane, but he's also a county engineer, discussing the whole East Washington thing.
Yeah.
You're held in very high regard.
Thank you for passing that along.
It was an excellent discussion of what goes on, what they do, and what happened with East Washington. This is nice. Street Commissioner, you're up.
I've submitted my monthly report for April. Additionally, on behalf of the service department, I'd like to thank everyone for helping out with a successful trash day. It was very well received by the residents. And we had another first, we had never received a building on a trailer before, which we did this.
We have 2 minutes to close.
That's all I have.
Questions of the street commissioner?
So with regard to that building, should there be a policy statement for the next trash day that says, don't bring us a building in pieces on a flatbed?
No snowmobiles either.
It would have been unsafe to turn it away. It was considered, but it would have been unsafe for him to enter back onto the road.
Okay. But had they known in advance that we would not have accepted the deconstructed building, then we would have had a safety issue.
But I think in the material that came to the house, it said no building materials, didn't it?
I believe it's something about construction material, but I don't know if that's still in the writing.
Construction debris.
Construction debris.
Yeah. So we can just make sure that it's exclamation pointed out next year.
Yeah. We try to look around and notice things going onto trailers the week ahead, but we had no idea this was about 30.
This, and Mark was involved in the first trailer load. This could have been a very unsafe situation for us, as well as all the debris that got dumped onto the drive and all the meals and everything else going on. I mean, we really put our people at risk for accepting this load. And I think we should be reasonable about it. I mean, we saved a resident, how many hundreds or thousands of dollars in having a construction dumpster, and that's great and fine, but we put our people at risk and we shouldn't do that.
That's,
We should change the policy.
this is what, I don't really have a policy, but I think with the newsletter, we gotta be hard at it. And, it's, probably should follow at my position to say no. When they come in, they, we're not coming in here.
Or would you like a recommendation from the streets committee on the topic?
That streets get it organized, and yeah, that's something that the next
That'd be
week, yeah.
great.
I mean, we would need to define construction,
Sure. Yeah.
debris, something, so that people are on notice what can't be done. But I've been doing this a lot of years along with other members of council, and you see a lot of construction debris. If you define that as concrete blocks, tree houses that have been torn down, beams, boulders, I mean, all kinds of stuff. It amazes me at what comes through. And probably 400 exercise machines. All of which weigh 129 pounds apiece.
Other comments of the street commissioner?
Real quick, Tim, I failed to ask this in our streets committee meeting. Corner of Snyder, moving the sign, filling the ditch there. Is there an ETA on that?
We're working on Lake Louise right now,
Okay.
but I could move that out.
No, I was just curious.
But I don't want to miss the deadline for Lake Louise. There's small ones that have to be put in, a lot of ditching work to be done back there. I want to do all that before the was put in.
Sure.
Mark?
Just one other thing, Street Commissioner, your team did fabulous. I thought that was amazing how well the Russell guys worked with us, with your guys, and how everything went like clockwork. You said there were like 365 cars roughly. That's probably more than we had like last year.
Oh, yes.
And more than we had the year before. Right? There was hardly any lines, hardly any waiting, going right through one after another. It was really impressive to watch. So kudos to the street department.
Thank you. That's
Yeah. And then you did the 2 days previous to that for us old people as well.
Senior.
Just for your info, I will be attending the Russell Township trustee meeting on June 2nd to thank them for their guys and their equipment, and also talk to them about the East Sid, try to get the feel for them, try to develop some sort of relationship with Russell, because I think we're in this for the long haul. And it's, Bainbridge up to South Russell, you might as well start building communication. But anyway, it's at 6 o'clock on Tuesday, 6 o'clock on Thursday, June the 2nd. At the home. Yeah. And Tim, I don't know what you did to get, I don't know, Mark, about you, more people got out and helped. Maybe it's just, we had more people get out of the cars and help, that I've seen in previous years. I don't know how you I was standing there watching you guys work, so.
Well, some were invited to come out.
Oh,
They saw how badly Chris and I were struggling. Wanted to make sure that we didn't get hurt any worse.
All right, street committee, you're up.
Street committee met there last Friday, May 6th. The notes are in your packets. A number of items were discussed, particularly the 2023 road program. But there were 3 items that came up that the street committee has a recommendation on. The first was that with regard to East Washington Street paving job, council may recall that the county was going to bid out paving from the South Russell line out to East Washington, out to, I guess, Aurora or someplace, Bainbridge, through Bainbridge, and that contract didn't happen. So the question for the village is, should the village on its own pave our portion of East Washington Street? And it may be that the county succeeds in bidding out its job, and the same contractor bids on both jobs, and there might be some savings, but maybe not. So the streets committee considered the situation, and it was our recommendation there that the village bid out the East Washington Street project this year with specifications prepared by the engineer, such that we could go it alone if need be, or with the county with the same contractor. But it does no harm to bid it out, because the village can reject the bids if they come in too high. But this is an opportunity for us to address East Washington Street, which is getting a lot more traffic over the last couple of years than it used to be, because of all the restaurants and whatnot that are in our fine dining district. So it is our recommendation that we do that, Mayor, in an appropriate moment. I'd be happy to put forth a motion for that purpose.
Before we do the motion, we can still get this done this year, Eric.
I could have it ready for bid in 2 weeks.
Eric should, or
And you
Danielle,
said in 2 months or 2
2 weeks.
should we talk about using, I forget the. Permissive gas tax, yeah. If we use our money, save the permissive gas tax, bill roadies, it would also make the county see that we're spending down our balances and say, don't use too high.
Yes. That's you're certainly welcome to, Washington Street is a permissible street to spend the MRF funds on. It's the village's discretion as to if you want to spend down that account or not on Washington. I have no opinion on it.
About 120,000 in that account now, Danielle, approximately. It might pay for East Washington Street paving, maybe. So let's see about the bids first. We don't have to commit, do we, Danielle?
No, we're not going to miss the funds, and we have to, there's paperwork, we have to do the undo what we already did.
Yeah.
But you can wait till you get the bids and then decide.
The county got a bad surprise when the bids were at least 10% more than the bids were.
Yeah, they're more than that.
You know, if that happens too, then council may decide that it's something that can wait until the following year. Or...
Certainly Washington Street is not amongst our list of worst priorities.
So with that in mind, Mayor, we can do that at an appropriate time for a motion. The second recommendation that we came up with deals with stormwater, specifically the Family Life Center. And the solicitor sent out the nuisance abatement part of our ordinances, or was that revised code? Both.
It follows the advisory.
So that a nuisance that originates outside of South Russell can be addressed with action by South Russell to fix the problem and then present the bill to the offending party. With that in mind, we would recommend that we pursue the nuisance abatement procedure in connection with the Family Life Center. And if it's the retention pond there, or is that a retention pond?
Let's just call everything a retention pond, goes off the town a little better.
I'm with you on that. And we would begin that process with the idea that the village would take care of the problem. It's about $7,600, as I recall, too, roughly. And then seek some kind of reimbursement from Family Life Center at appropriate time. Third, was that?
The total was 7,600?
Actually, it's 7,400. Yes, to clean out their retention pond.
Okay, I thought it was double that, so I'm confused. All right,
Family Life Center is $7,400 to clean out their retention pond.
right, okay. And you're talking about doing it and then building it back to them?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
there's a process to follow, and we would have to follow that process to do it, but clearly nothing's gonna happen unless we do something about it. There's the people in Chagrin Lakes who take the water.
Councilman Porter, so just really quick, the process of getting to like the zoning inspector and inspecting it, I'm not saying that what Eric has already inspected or the mayor or you, but it would start with that process, so I don't know who's gonna be the one to advise Dave, but that's the process.
Mayor, could you send our building official to begin this process? It's a written report, right, that comes back, email sufficient, I think.
Sure, just kind of talking, make sure that we have the, exactly kind of how the pollution is happening, if you will, the other pollution in the shipping lines.
Okay.
And showing how that works.
Can you get that ball rolling? Okay. And then the next thing is the erosion issue at 37 Cascades. Looks like the village is at least partly responsible for this. Would that be accurate, Street Commissioner?
Correct.
In what manner?
The work that was done by the village under Cascades, the culvert, the box culvert was increased in size. It was almost double.
The capacity was certainly doubled.
And so the water is moving at a more rapid rate and more volume at one time. And the flow is going towards the resident's home and washing away. The last few years, it's washed away 5 feet of this property.
Because of that, Mayor, it appears that R&D Trenching would charge $6,000 for the labor if SRV bought the materials to correct the problem for 37 Cascades. At an appropriate moment, I would make that motion to village do that. And subject to any comments by Councilman Bell, that concludes the street committee report.
No, there's just, going on top of everyone else's notes to you earlier, Tim, your team was great on trash, I think putting that together, I enjoyed myself. From now on, you should warn new people they need NDA for the next one.
You will be out of town next year. Last Saturday.
My hair.
Okay, Mark, wants to do the street committee yourself? Let's, knock off these, and are you ready for all this?
Motions?
Okay,
Sure,
here we
there's
go.
going to be 2 of them. Here I move that the engineer prepare bid specs and the mayor and the fiscal officer be authorized to bid out the paving of East Washington Street within the confines of the village. So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Basically, we'll get a bid and then we'll decide if we're gonna use it.
Or decide if we're gonna do it at all.
Okay.
It's nice to have numbers in hand.
In my conversation with Joe Patel, the East Washington price that they started with, they raised it 30% over what they thought it should be, just because of the high price. And
Materials for paving right now is a guess.
okay, it's been moved and seconded to take seat bids for East Washington. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed.
And of course, we want our fire trucks to have smooth surfaces, which is operate.
Thank you.
And it's for 37 Cascades, Mayor, I move that the mayor, street commissioner, and fiscal officer be authorized to enter into a contract with R&D Trenching in the amount of not more than $6,500 for labor to correct the problem at 37 Cascades. And that the street commissioner be authorized to purchase the materials necessary for that job. So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed.
That concludes the street committee, Mayor.
Questions of the street committee? We're at the building committee.
Thank you, Mayor. Building committee met on May the 5th. Minutes were submitted in the packet. Are there any questions? Councilman Mr. Bell, anything there?
Nothing to add.
I'm gonna play you the response we got from the man who has a business in Auburn. He's a building inspector. I wanted to hear that first. The question, would that be a
Who was that
no?
person?
Yeah.
Who was that person?
I have to get his email.
Was that the guy that you mentioned, you have another candidate?
No, he was the only other.
Only other one?
Yeah, okay. This is the only other building inspector that has qualifications, this man.
Okay, not a zoning inspector.
No. Anybody could be a zoning inspector.
Right, anyone, and that's, I guess, what we're looking for.
Okay. Moving on, police chief?
Thank you very much. With the solicitor's approval, I'd like to go into a little background on the NC Art Studios history, so you kind of you guys kind of know what's going on there. So back when NC Studios moved in, right away we determined there was a problem with traffic backing up into the intersection as they were attempting to make those left turns into NC Studios. So what we did in order to try to help them, we came up with the agreement to use the village lot to come through, drive through, and drop the kids off in the back of the building. That agreement was never really utilized by them. There were a lot of complaints about parking in our parking lot, and they never really truly dropped off the kids at the approved location. So I received an email from Mr. Holtz, and his email indicated that left turns into MC Studio were dangerous, and he repeated himself. And in response to that, and under the powers of the chief of police, the solicitor and I discussed it, and we posted that no left turn sign up there to alleviate his concerns about the left turns being dangerous. At the time, I sent that email out on December 6th, and I did not get a response, so there was no opposition of that sign being posted. And the next thing I heard was about a month later from Colleen questioning that. So with that being said, the sign posted under section 40603 is legally posted. And in my opinion, anyone observed disobeying that traffic control device may be cited. I don't know if you're in agreement with that, but that's how I see it. I think that's a legally posted sign. If anybody chooses to disobey that sign, we may end up citing that.
So I want to just make sure I understand. There's an issue with turning left into the art studio.
So in the beginning, when their customers were trying to make that left turn, you're trying to cross over two lanes of travel. You're crossing over a turn lane and a through lane. And the trouble was that traffic was backing up in the mornings and they couldn't make that turn, so traffic would back up in the intersection. Like if you turn green for Bell Road and you have cars, tail end of the cars in the intersection. So that's when we decided to help them out and start the agreement. So we had the agreement in place. And then on top of that, after we posted the no left turn sign and they complained about that and how are we going to access the studio, then we also gave them permission to come through the parking lot, make a right on 306 and enter into their studio. I think the problem that we're having now, since the farmers market just opened up for the first time, is due to the fact that driveway is blocked off. They can't pull through our parking lot to make that right turn on the 306 to enter into their business. So that's what the challenge is today.
So Saturday is the biggest problem.
Saturday is the problem.
The only problem.
It is. We've been getting by with, the no left turn sign and the provisions that we allow them to cut through the parking lot in order to gain access to the studios.
So as a response to allowing them to use public property to turn around, you gave them an option of another piece of public property to turn around.
We did.
Okay.
So,
Chief, you mentioned you received a email from someone from Mr. Holt.
correct.
Is that the elder Mr. Holt, who now lives in what, North Carolina?
No, that was from Patrick, in response to a complaint we had about their customers parking in the village hall, the village parking lot in front of the building department. They would have numerous cars parked there throughout the course of the day, and we're not, they were walking to the studio from the village hall side, from the building department side, I should say. So they had cars parked there in violation of, our signs posted that says, for village business only.
You have something about the left-hand turn thing. That complaint came from Patrick Gray.
Patrick,
How dangerous it was.
correct.
Same guy who was here tonight.
Correct. So in response to his claim that the intersection was dangerous, left turns into MC Studios are dangerous. That was what we did. On top of realizing that we had a problem with the traffic backing up into the intersection, we posted the no left turn sign. In response to that.
You might not be up to this point yet. Is there a no left turn sign for leaving NCR Studio to
No.
the south?
We didn't go that far. We didn't think that was
All
necessary
right, it's
because
only incoming.
income.
All right.
Because that was the only problem we truly had, was traffic backing up into the intersections. They never claimed there was a problem leaving MC Studios, because, they can make a right turn and turn around, but it's a difficult, situation.
Chief, so he sent the email
Correct.
and brought to our attention that turn off the 306 turning left was dangerous.
Correct.
Okay, and did he suggest what we should do about it?
No, he did not.
But he did say it was dangerous.
I can quote. I have to tell you again and again, the left-hand turn into our business is dangerous. It is dangerous because of the behavior of impatient drivers sitting at the light. It may be influencing why a parent, even though they shouldn't park there, parks in the village lot. It is dangerous.
Okay,
And what's the date of that?
December 6th.
For 21?
Correct.
okay. And we did give them permission, because we want them to succeed,
Correct.
to drop off the children on a driveway, is that correct?
We did.
And they did come to us and mention that it sure would be nice to have a little playground area, and it would really be nice to have a fence in, but it would be on the village property, is that correct?
Correct.
And because we want them to succeed, we allow it, is that correct?
I believe so.
That's correct. Okay, that's all I have to say.
And one other thing, Councilman, just so you know, that the agreement was also extended or expanded to include not just registered students and their parents and their drivers, but anyone to cut through the lot. And actually, there was a sign that was up at Bell, and I think it was said no through drive or.
No through traffic.
No
And
through
we
traffic.
removed that.
That was removed, so that no one was confused that they could go through. Now, the agreement was incumbent upon the Holtzes to let their customers know. It wasn't something that the village was necessarily posting or, but, that is, so just so you know, it was, at first it was just the registered students, and then it's expanded.
Very good.
So just for clarification, today's complaint was because of the situation we had just this past Saturday. And it made it difficult for them to gain access due to the fact that we had that directly.
Because there's no impediment to traffic going north on 306 to turn right into their property.
No, absolutely not. And the only thing they have to do is turn around. If you're coming from the north, or if you're coming from Bell Road, you may have to do a turnaround somewhere.
Other questions of our police department? Police chief. Thank you, Chief.
One more thing, Good Gov Deals auctions completed on May 3rd. We will be receiving a check for $14,787.75 for the auctions. Any questions on that?
That's, get rid of some.
Well, we got rid of a police car and some police equipment and some service department equipment as well.
Put a chainsaw.
You did get them.
Did you get it?
No.
Yeah, so we were offered $4,400 for that car as a trade-in for our new cruisers that are on the way. And with the way the used vehicle market was going, I thought it would be a better idea to put them on Gov Deals, see if we can do better. So we listed the vehicle, it's a 2014 Ford Explorer, we listed that vehicle for $4,400, what we were going to get from the dealership. And there was a bidding war on that vehicle, and we ended up selling it for $11,000. So I think we did.
And all that money doesn't go into your account.
Not mine, it goes into yours.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, that's the village. All right, the safety committee.
All right, the chief submitted a end of month activity report as part of his report. Generally speaking, we always attach the safety committee minutes to that report as well, but you'll notice that there are none this particular month. The safety committee did meet on 5 May in conjunction with the HR committee, but was to go directly into executive session to discuss the hiring of a part-time and a full-time patrolman. So that was the sole activity for the safety committee. The next meeting of the safety committee is scheduled for the 2nd of June. 2 motions, one I'll introduce and the other will have to open for discussion, I think, as we go forward. But I'd like to make a motion to accept the $400 donation from Dry Insurance for the bike rodeo and the Cops and Kids fishing event. So moved.
Moved and seconded, any questions?
Real quick, the $400. That's going to the village, not the Patrolmen's Association.
The village. Those are both village events, so it goes right to the village.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed.
Okay, the second one is the continuation of the discussion for the funding of the improvements to the Sherman Valley Fire Department building. There was a lot of discussion in council with members of the fire department, and it appeared like the consensus may be that we'd like to see this funding rolled into a contract renewal. I'd like to open the floor for discussion first before we introduce a motion, if that's the way council wants to go forward.
That's the way I see it. That's the way I see it.
I have reservations about doing it that way because you guys need the money by July 1st, right? At least that's what it says in the escrow agreement.
But to Chris's point, this would be front loaded.
By front loading, if you're going to give them 70 grand before we have a new contract.
No, it's not a contract. In the contract, include 70,000 as a fee, as a prepaid expense as part of the month. It's $1,950 a month for 36 months. We're gonna prepay it, that part of the expense. So you put the 70,000 up front.
But it's not called a donation.
It's not.
No, you have conditions upon it, right? I mean, what do you expect? So if they were to, in a year, say, we're no longer gonna serve something to the village, they have to make us whole.
Okay, so are we going to have a new contract with the fire department with this $70,000 one-time fee? We have one council meeting June 13th.
Well,
Yeah, special.
We could have special meetings, that's very true, but sure, but I mean, is this going to be more than 2 weeks from now? And who's going to do this?
okay. I'm not gonna speak for these gentlemen.
No, just the council.
Okay, but I'm gonna suggest that if they want this money, we're offering them an option to say, bring us a contract that's going to be effective January 1st, 2023 and last for 3 years. And bring it to us before July 1, and we will prepay part of it, the $70,000, okay, with stipulations on it. And so then it's up to them to bring us a contract.
You guys do that before June 13th?
I don't know. I understand we'll certainly make every effort to do that, that's what it takes to do this, but I can't commit to that tonight. I can't commit on part of it.
I understand, I mean, I know you guys have, other people have to get involved with this. My concern is that this isn't going to happen somehow. There's a glitch somewhere. South Russell doesn't participate. And the deadline expires, and you guys lose your funding from Cuyahoga County because not all the communities involved did this. Okay?
Did I understand though that Cuyahoga County, I mean, is this an artificial date, 1 July? Or did Cuyahoga County say they're not gonna contribute if you don't have the other funds in hand by 1 July? Can you clarify anything on
I
that?
believe that date was selected by the people, Mayor Prince and
So it's an artificial
But
date.
if we had a resolution,
and Aaron Group from,
if we had a vote that said that we're gonna do it,
We can make the payment
Well, could you not make the payment that you're looking for, the 69,000 change? And it will be known as a credit
against the future contract.
against the future contract. How about that?
I'll look to your solicitor, if that's.
Maybe we could do that, but we don't have an ordinance for that. I think we would still need the ordinance.
I'll be happy to do an ordinance. Shortly.
Okay, well, and that takes the pressure off them
Yes.
to, okay. But it puts
It's a
It puts us in a position of being in full faith, and as you said, I mean, more than 120 years, except in a couple of years, you've been doing this. But it's full faith that we will come to an agreement on a new contract.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, because,
We've been on this rodeo before. We looked at Bainbridge, we looked at Russell, we looked at, I don't know, somebody else, didn't we? Newberry. And we concluded Chagrin Falls Volunteer Fire Department was the best fit for us. And I think that's probably still true, although there was considerable debate about it as well. But I recall Mike Carroll, who was an actual fire chief in Lindbergh, you guys know him, I'm sure, was the guy who ultimately recommended going with Chagrin Falls, even though he had examined all the other possibilities.
But we did the due diligence.
We did, indeed. But I think if we voted the money, and it was a credit on our contract, priced appropriately to account for the extra money, of course, then I think we could do that tonight, and you could report back to whomever you need to report to that South Russell was in as a credit to 70,000, 69, whatever it is, for that purpose. The fire department, okay with that arrangement?
Sounds doable.
So, you guys gotta tell me yes or no. I hate to put you on the spot, but you guys get paid the big bucks.
Yeah, so specifically ask the question, what is it that answer?
The question is the fire department acceptable, it's willing to take the 69,000, whatever, and change, and make it a credit for a contract, 3-year contract, 2023, such contract to include that amount, so it's a zero. We vote you
With the
money.
understanding that's in addition to the contract.
yes.
Yes.
And probably the cost of living, well, present contract would probably be also an increase, a normal increase.
Wouldn't surprise me. The last one had like increases each of the 3 years, as I recall.
Correct.
Yes. It's like 1.5% or something
Exactly
like
the
that,
same way, yeah.
to account for your higher costs of operating. If you guys are okay with that, and speak for the department, you guys get paid the big bucks, so you must, then perhaps we can do this.
Please understand, there's no big bucks involved in it.
Well, for those of us who were in the military,
Yeah.
that phrase means a lot.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's your decision, Captain, because they pay you the big bucks, right? The 40 grand a year. What was it?
You have the responsibility. So, the question is, back to the auditor, do we need or not the auditor, but the solicitor, do we need an ordinance? And what, can you help us craft the wording of that? I mean, is it something we have to do now?
I would do it now, and I will take a stab at it.
I'm trying to put together, fix 1, 2, and 3 together in my head. Chris, it sounded like you mentioned that we had a contract, 3-year contract, when we put $7,000 up front, but you were expecting language in the contract that says if this doesn't work out, we get money back.
Well, the expectation is that while it's prepaid, if the contract only lasts a year and Chagrin Valley Fire Department disbands, then we don't have a contract for the remaining 2 years. So the balance, 66% of the $70,000 should be returned to the village. For the same reason, if for some reason Chagrin Valley Fire Department would breach the contract, whatever, fail to provide services, et cetera, then at that point, we would say that it would be, the $70,000 would be prorated upon that date, and it would be owed back to the village.
As a matter of contract law, I think that's a provision that protects the village. But you guys have been around since what, 1887 or something like that?
125 years.
They're not going anywhere.
Fire out here. So we don't expect that, but if we give you money and you guys breach or disband or something, such that you don't provide our services anymore, then yes, I think you're correct. There should be prorated return for that.
Those terms sound agreeable. My question is regarding the escrow agreement. So then are you not participating in the escrow? These funds are just spent however we choose to spend them, which will be.
No, we're putting it into the escrow.
Okay,
That's where it's going.
so do you still enter into the escrow agreement then?
Yes.
Which would in turn give us a deadline to present you a contract and discuss over the next 3 years. And I guess the question is when will be that deadline?
We would like it June 13th, which is our meeting. But if you run into trouble, you can let Dennis and the mayor know, if they have a special meeting, you need more time. And that's like a month. And I think this contract is pre-printed, and there's certain things you change, and then you print it out and you bring it to us.
The contract, I'm sorry, the contract language isn't the issue, it's figuring out what our costs are gonna be 3 years from now, and then building that around all of the communities. So I can't do a single contract. All 6 communities have to have their contracts at least calculated by the same date, to know what your part of the cost is. Because there's a pie of what it costs to operate the fire department, and how that pie is divided amongst the 6 communities is based on property valuation, population, number of fire calls, number of EMS calls. And so this would mean calculating our operating costs and capital expenditures for the next 3 years, which I have some idea at, but you can all see what's going on in the markets right now, you can all see what's going on with inflation right now. Trying to calculate what our wages will be 3 years from now is a crapshoot at this point.
Sure, typically you give us the contract towards the end of September.
Yeah.
We're asking for you to move it up.
Yep.
To mid-June.
No, I fully understand.
And this is a way for this village council to support your efforts in a way that protects us as well.
I'm
That's
kind of lost here, because the numbers haven't changed, it's still the same $69,000-$70,000.
That hasn't changed, but what he's talking about is what are their
What are their
operating costs going to be over the next 3 years? Because what they do with their contract is they build in a price increase per year. What he's saying is that they typically do it later in the year, but as we may all recall, we've often wanted the fire plan contract earlier than, October 31st, or thereabouts, which is typically when it came. You guys can agree to that, then we can move along with the money.
So the end of July. I've already committed to the conflict with you that we have in July, so we're moving forward a month.
Great, fair enough?
Yeah.
Very good. I'll
There
try
is
and
one
organize.
question, there's like one question, and that is, and I mean, it's up to you to maybe ask your legal counsel, but is there gonna be an issue if in fact there is a breach or something happens where those funds do have to be sent back to the village, as far as donation terms are concerned with the other committees and the agreement, that's something. Okay.
Yeah. There's two agreements, there's the escrow agreement and the
All right, so we give Mark a few minutes.
Yeah.
So basically, do we want to start with a motion?
Well, it has to be an ordinance, right?
Let's do an ordinance, that's just 3 readings, and we have,
No, we're gonna move them.
we have 5 votes.
I don't know. Let's find out. Otherwise, we'll.
That's why I'm saying, do we want to do a motion, find out if we got 5 votes, if not, no. Motion, find out, find out.
Whatever you want to do, you can, but either way, you're still going to get to that ordinance.
I think we need to introduce it tonight.
Well, there's just, there would be one delay, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
There, I'd like to introduce an ordinance, whereby the mayor, fiscal officer, solicitor as needed, will enter into, will execute an escrow agreement, the community funding and escrow agreement for the modernization of Spring Valley Fire Department Fire Station with the attached exhibit A thereto, and that the village would, contribute. Do you have the exact figure, Daniel? Is it? $69,769 into the escrow account for fire department's effort at modernizing the fire department station. And that amount, $69,769, shall be accounted for in the fire contract to be reviewed by the village of South Russell for the provision of fire services in the years 2023, 2024, 2025, and that amount will in effect be zeroed out by the fire department with an increase in that contract reflecting that same number. And that the fire department would provide the village in advance of July 1st, preferably by June 13th, a new contract for fire services indicating that amount. So moved. Move to waive further readings.
Been moved, second by Berger, roll call, please.
Discussion.
Sure.
You know, is there a necessity to waive the readings? Is that prudent?
I think it's timely. I think it's prudent because we've been going round and round with this for quite a while. And I think the fire department needs an answer. I think the other communities need an answer. And,
I mean, I think they have an answer. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Well, given that potentially I'm gone for the next council meeting, I'd like to see this move forward tonight and get it done so that if I don't have Wi-Fi in the net, that, you know, I don't hold this process up. So I think we should, I mean, we agreed to this as a non-binding resolution last year. Now all we're doing is we're putting it in a form that we think protects the residents of South Russell. So, you know, with that, I think we should go forward.
Solicitor, any issues legal wise?
Yeah, there are some issues. So one would be whether or not they can actually accept this. So, you could definitely draft an ordinance, not a question. It's just the concern of how they return the money if in fact something happens. And again, that's something I suppose they can answer.
if we need to, we can repeal the ordinance.
Sure.
And we don't want to do that. And you guys don't want us to either.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion before we have a roll call?
Okay, this is for waiving Canton,
Aye.
Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Licky,
Nay.
Porter,
Aye.
Bell,
Aye.
Bird.
Aye.
That's five.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Canton,
Aye.
Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Licky,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Bell,
Aye.
Bird.
Aye.
So, kind of put numbers to it. We're spending about $1,000 a day, about 370,000. There will be a cost of living increase, I'm sure. Put on to that. Plus will be $70,000 also put on to that. So just so everyone's prepared, we're probably about 400, we could be close to $500,000 for fire service this year. Thank you all very much for a good discussion. Thank you for 2 hours of your life.
Thank you for the questions, they're all very
And you
questions.
will, please spread the word.
And we recognize you guys are volunteers with Twin Falls. We very much appreciate you coming. But he's got Major's insignia, or Lieutenant Commander insignia. You don't have any insignia of Chief?
I don't like to do that. They're on my blouse, which is up.
So,
We thought the chief was gonna come tonight, so we can.
Okay, you just spread the word. Thank you very much.
very good.
Danielle, just a point of clarification, the $69,000 was in the budget?
Yes.
Okay, so there's nothing that has to be done from a budget standpoint. Okay, thank you very much,
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Any other questions of the safety committee?
I do have one further issue that I just want to bring up at the request of the police chief. And this is a statement in your mayor's report, Mayor, in which you received a phone call from the local mayor upset because, we didn't call and inform the mayor that we were hiring an employee from the municipality. And in the future, we say professional courtesy should include a phone call to the leader of any municipality, letting them know we're hiring one of their employees. I would just invite to council and the mayor's attention that oftentimes when employees are changing employment, they don't want their current employer to know. The fact of the matter is I believe it should be incumbent on that individual to inform his own community. It may in fact impede his transition, leave that employee or the department with a bad taste in their mouth. The fact of the matter is that I think we have to respect the prospective employee that we're hiring's requests and desires there, because oftentimes, we have not employed anybody at our fire or our police department who is homegrown. Everybody works somewhere else. And generally speaking, there's more often than not, people don't want that information promulgated. So I would offer that we consider letting the individual who gets hired. Now, the only question, if somebody comes and complains, instead of complaining, and I've mentioned this before about we're hiring people away or we're stealing people, a good question back to that individual is, what are you doing at your department that is making people consider leaving? So, that's the one issue that we wanted to bring up about that particular aspect, because I think you're in a potential breach of trust with the new hire.
Okay, I'll just frankly say I disagree. I think professional courtesy, that I would let the mayor know. Question?
Wait, after the hire.
Yeah.
After it's done,
Yeah.
then it's fine, but not during the hiring process.
No, that was never
Okay,
never
all right.
considered. I think that's just a courtesy to your colleagues.
Didn't we get a call from the chief prior to the hiring?
Yes,
And then subsequently, that chief went to the mayor to complain?
so I received a phone call, right after the candidate put his 2 weeks notice. He was on it, but.
Okay, but the transaction had been done at that point.
We may be on.
He put his 2 weeks
You
notice.
put his 2 weeks notice in, and then he's a free agent and whatever, then you can call the mayor and you can have that discussion. But right,
Yes.
okay. I just want to understand the timeline. Sorry.
Chief, if we hired anybody right out of the academy, ever?
Now, historically, no, it's, I think the last person that got hired directly out of the academy was me. That was 1997.
And therein lies.
So we do have a long-term plan.
So right after that, I stopped doing that.
You did for some reason. I don't know why.
Any other questions for the safety committee? We are moving on to HR. Guys, it is 9 o'clock. Stay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen, I appreciate it.
HR, you're up.
Thank you. Okay, first thing on my agenda, we've had some discussions with the chief about hiring part-time officers and the difficulty in getting them. And the fact that we appear not to be as competitive in the marketplace as we might want to be in terms of compensation. Okay, that the going rate seems to be closer to $30 an hour, and our max rate is, I'm sorry, $26.78. And so, bring this before council with the idea that we should talk about whether or not we want to raise the pay scale for the part-time police officer to make us more competitive.
And with that, the tiered salary agreement, it has some other things. Is that the same?
You got the,
It's a
we'll
different
hold
document?
that issue for a
Okay.
moment.
Different document.
But so specifically, the minimum is 1957, which isn't happening on any level, and the max is 2678. So, I looked at it and my proposal would be that we raise the minimum to 2257 and the max to 2978 to put us in a competitive position.
Is that enough?
I'll leave it to the chief to speak.
Well, the only thing I'll say is, there are, things that would be more attractive to a part-time officer would be details, off-duty details. And off-duty details, for example, in Bainbridge, pay $45 an hour. Our off-duty detail rate is $35 an hour. Generally, it's $35. That's on the increase. Judge County Sheriff is moving to $40 an hour for their detail rate. So a detail, part-time off-duty detail could be a little more attractive than coming in for a shift at $26.75 an hour. So, if we're closer to 30, that helps immensely.
Okay. So, sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I threw out a number of 2978. Does that get us where we need to be, or do we need to be higher?
I think that would be satisfactory at this time. I don't think that we need to climb much higher than that, but I think we're right in the ballpark at that point.
So when you say detail, are you talking parties, banquets, stuff like that?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So of shorter duration?
Yeah, shorter durations.
2978, raise that 23 cents.
Just make it $30? Okay.
But it's 30, it sounds like a much bigger number.
Does sound good.
That's your max rate, right?
That's your max, but that's what they're gonna, effectively, that's what they're gonna get hired in at. Now, if you wanna move the max rate even higher, and then just say, hey, we'll try to hire people at 30 for part-time, I'm not adverse to that, but I just think where we're at right now, we're really fighting an uphill battle, trying to get people to work at the 2678.
I think that gives you more flexibility.
Do you want us to take 2 weeks and think about it, or are you ready?
Is that
I'm at the call of council as to what they want to do.
Well, if we do it, we have to amend the ordinance.
Right.
So we'd have to waive ratings and do all that. Go ahead. See, why wait, right? Why wait?
Okay, but what do you want the max rate, what,
I support 30.
as a max rate, and just leave it there for the moment?
Then they change it again.
Okay.
Yeah, we're always make it higher, so
That's
it's
it.
really inflationary changes right now.
Every year you got to change it.
Sure.
Hey, man.
Next year,
Next year we may
6
be-
weeks. God forbid, next year we're in a recession, or a depression.
Well, you don't pay the tax rate, right?
No, but when people look at our pay ordinance, I imagine they do, and they see the top rate.
Chief, you decide where they get an hour.
No, that was already structured, pre-structured. So
What you're
part-time,
doing is just setting the range, so then once you set the range, you're also gonna have to let us know what all our part-timers are getting, and then the ones that are currently employed are getting a raise effective what date, and then, because part-timers all make the same amount, so it's a two-piece deal.
We have no first reading, and then in June, we can knock this off. That time to think about it,
Okay.
it's done,
All right.
notify people.
So, I want to make a motion amending ordinance 2022-29 for line item 9, which is part-time patrol officer, raising the minimum rate to $22.57 an hour and raising the max rate to $30 an hour. First reading. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Sure, we'll get that on the agenda. Okay, moving along. Okay, just highlighting a couple of things from our May 4th HR committee meeting. We discussed travel and training policies and procedures. Those would be policies added to the handbook covering outside training for our employees and travel to those training sessions. HR is committed to work together to put together this addition to the handbook. We've also talked about potentially hiring outside consulting to help us with that. So we're working on that. We were asked to consider opportunities to name Citizen of the Year recipients in the village. It is the opinion of the committee that we do not recommend to council to do that. We suggest that if the mayor wants to recognize a citizen of the village, then the mayor should do so by proclamation and nothing further need be done. We also suggest that no commercial businesses should be recognized or advanced over another commercial business. So that's the opinion of the community. We are in the process of putting together an appreciation gift policy going forward to recognize those residents who have served in a volunteer capacity on our committees and boards. But to recognize those who have previously served in the most recent past, we have a motion for you, and that is that council shall direct the mayor to recognize those individuals that have served in a voluntary capacity on committees and boards within the village for a period of at least 2 years and have now completed their service within the last 6 months by presenting each individual with a proclamation of recognition and a $50 gift card to be purchased by the village. Individuals that have been compensated for their services or are either on architectural review board or village employees are not eligible for this recognition. So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Chris, did that include previous ones as well? Or, I got lost in.
Sorry, going back, we said anyone who has completed their service within the last 6 months.
Within the last,
Okay, because I didn't want to have to go back to 1992 and figure out. So, okay, and in anticipation that we will write a policy going forward, that's great, but we need to recognize those people now at the luncheon coming up.
So someone who is compensated.
Yeah.
Will not receive the $50 gift
They are
certificate, but they will receive the.
They can be recognized by proclamation for their service, and I think that's fine, but if they've been paid in some way already for their services, I think then the gift card is kind of redundant.
So,
You have one point, so you have to somehow put in the village hall credits for the council members. But that's not.
that's compensation.
That's practice.
Not policy.
And I will amend the motion to include for the 2 previous council members that they receive the print of the village hall
And
and their proclamation in recognition of their service.
Because that's it.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, so David Maestros and Laura LaChapelle. Give the proclamation, and give the delegate card. I'll take back the super, sword.
Whatever you want. Okay.
That's it. Nice, quick work there.
Are we ready for?
We need to
Any
vote.
other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
Okay, in a moment here, in a couple of moments, we will table the motion to amend, to repeal the pay range ordinance. We just want to make a quick comment on that. We have a matrix that we put together. It was discovered in our latest meeting that there are positions that are not covered in the matrix. We had individuals who were not added to it, the fiscal auditor is one, and there are others, so that needs to be updated. The second thing we found out is that in looking at the ranges in the matrix that we created, they are not consistent with what is already in the ordinance, so that needs to be changed and updated. So we would appreciate your patience in tabling that motion until we get that corrected, which we will do. So that's my word of explanation. Subject to Councilwoman Kavanaugh's comments, I think that concludes the report.
Do you move to table or you just table?
I'll move to table
I'll second.
when we get there.
Very good.
Okay.
Questions of our HR committee? Two questions. In the bills list, we issued a check for $7 and some cents for reimbursement mileage, and I'm sure we spent more than that on the mileage. Would it be smart for people that have expenses that come to Wayne to do that quarterly, so that it's actually worth our time to
cut the check for
cut the check
$7.
or something like that?
From an accounting perspective, I agree entirely with your statement. But there are individuals who
One right there.
don't feel that they should have to front money to the village
Okay.
for their expenses, and therefore it's a cost to do business, and we should just cut the check and move on, right?
This is for mileage, I'm sorry.
Yeah, for mileage or for incidental expenses. If we send someone to the post office and they spent $3 on postage, do we cut them a check for $3? Yeah, we sort of do. We don't wait and accumulate that over time. It's just, people are funny that way.
Well, the other thing is, if you rack up these things and then you leave, you know,
Well, yeah, then it's incumbent on you to make sure that they've been accounting for all of it. This way it doesn't.
understood, but we have to modify our employee handbook.
Yeah.
To say, we'll chase you down and hand you a check, you know, for $9.12.
It's cleaner, it's simpler, even though it's an expense.
Okay, any other questions of the HR committee?
Did you need to cover number 5, or did my statement before handle?
No, I think it's covered. That we need to move forward with getting a part-time administrative person with respect to the building department.
Would it be smart, Chris, just to do for all 3 departments? Make your administrative assistant just have the flexibility.
Well,
to possibly help out. Given the
Yes.
chief and the.
sure, and that's fine, okay, but we specifically created the position of a full-time person because there was a need here at the administrative level to do that. And I think then on further reflection, to take that person and say, okay, now we're gonna send them over to the building department, or now we're gonna send them to the police department, or whatever, that defeats the need here. So we need to keep the full-time person here, and we need to continue to search for that part-time person. The bill needs in other departments, yeah, to be a floater.
Are we still advertising for that part-time?
I shut it off because if you shut it off, then turn it back on and use the top of the list. So on the deep, so it'll go back on tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I believe we're at the property committee.
Thank you, Mayor. Properties had a special property meeting was held on April 27th. The minutes have been submitted in the packet. Eric, this meeting was about the possibilities of developing a soccer field. East Washington side of the park. You are aware of this?
I'm aware of it.
Okay, is this something that you'll have in your report?
It will be, yeah, there will be something included in there for that option.
Okay, very good. Any other questions about that particular special?
No questions, just that I was completely flummoxed by the amount. I did not know it cost that much money.
I will let
Yeah.
$16 million.
If I may continue, there was a special property meeting held on May the 2nd. And once again, the minutes were submitted in your packet. Are there any questions about that? And finally, there will be a special property meeting. I should call it a Parks Committee meeting, on May 16th at 7 o'clock here at the hall. And at this time, I would like to add a conversation dealing with our village hall and pavilion usage, and invite our solicitor.
Can you do that, Brian?
I can't, yep, you said 7.
7 o'clock. Council Lady Kavanaugh. Anything else to add?
You covered that very well, and we have some things we want to really get buttoned up and make everybody happy.
Okay, that's all I have.
Questions of the property committee? Bruce, you want to talk about the
Yes,
restaurant?
so, what the mayor has up there, I think we all got an invitation to go to Moreland Hills, their pavilion opening on River Road. It's absolutely beautiful. It backs up on the west side of River Road, very close to the polo fields. It's a bigger pavilion than what we have. And this picture of the facilities, as it were, does not do it justice. The mayor went at a certain time, I didn't see him, I went later, and I thought, that's my bathroom right there. And the mayor did you talk to their mayor?
Yes.
Mayor Coons, and it cost them about $48,000.
Yes.
So,
Did you say?
$48,000.
I think you might use their phone, thank you.
That's a self-contained unit. It's not plumbed and.
Correct. But it's not very similar to Foley.
Right.
But the police can lock it, it doesn't invite loiterers and nighttime people and that sort of thing.
It's handicap accessible too.
Theirs is handicap accessible, and I did notice, Mayor, while I was there, they have a lot of paved walkways, which I don't know, we could do it for that, but.
If I may add, the fact that I grew up in a coal mining town, we've never had anything that nice. And we would have moved out of our house and moved into that.
Jerry.
That's very nice. Very nice.
I don't want to spend too much time talking about restaurants. Anastasia, you were there. Is anything else? Basically, it was $48,000 restroom. What else could you say went on that was, there were a lot of things I picked up
Yeah.
on the use of the facility that they
So-
talked about.
Charles, or about the facility,
Yeah.
or can I tell them what I told you?
Yes.
So there was a man who was involved with, he donated, his family owned the land, they had a house on the land, and they donated it to Moreland Hills, so they surprised him at the event with naming the pavilion after him. It was really sweet.
They did, it's interesting. They, For the, not as labor intensive, I think, is how hard we work. Their service guys were there, they were cooking hot dogs, they had pizzas, they had a pasta, that was it. And so you didn't have a lot of mess. And the other thing is, their use of the pavilion is very interesting as to how they go about. So not to dump on the property, but they have some really good ideas that I think we should consider.
Yeah, for example, they would rent to non-residents, and I don't know if that's something, we'll talk about that. They also had their police force fishing with kids, but you guys already do that.
The guy.
Yeah, it was nice, I got there, it was kind of raining down, but and it was a beautiful day, so, just beautiful. And that, by the way, is the, those kids go to Chagrin, to that end, that section of River Road, so they are Chagrin students.
Two other things, I think I did tell Rich Washington, some of Rich Washington has worked with Chagrin River Watershed Partners, and they're gonna pay for the rain garden.
Okay.
True, I don't.
Yes.
Yeah, he told me that, I don't know all the details yet, which that is coming. On the property, we have a policy about the use of tables and chairs. There's a group of private people that are putting on a picnic on May 22nd to recognize the police and fire departments of South Russell and Chagrin. And that private committee would like to use some tables and chairs along South Russell. And our present policy does not allow that. We want to create an exception for this event.
Should we create an exception for you? Do you know about it?
Oh, I don't have to.
Okay. Jerry?
Yeah, I know that.
Okay, what he's at.
I'm sort of on the committee.
Do we do this by
Well, I can't vote on
motion? Do it by motion, Mayor?
Well, it's, yeah, you just make a motion that this committee would be allowed to use the South Russell tables and chairs.
Do you bring them back in the position that they were in, or in the shape they were in, like they let them out? There's my motion.
Are we talking about the wooden ones? Or ones in council
I don't
chambers,
know.
or what?
Could use the other ones.
The
There's
wooden
all
ones?
of that, it says South Russell Grange on the back. Where's the tables downstairs as well?
No, they're in the street.
Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Since you're probably, you have to help them load.
That's fine.
Okay. Right, so moved.
We have a second
Second.
discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Actually, can we do a roll call?
Roll call.
Jerry's comment. Ham,
Yes.
Campbell, aye.
No.
Porter,
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Turner.
Aye.
That's four.
Motion passes, okay, thank you. Public utilities,
Yes, Mayor, Public Utilities was supposed to meet tonight at 6:30, but I neglected to send out an agenda, so we did not meet. I was remiss. So anyway, I'll just change the date on the agenda I did prepare and send it out in time for the next meeting, which, Chris, are you available June 3rd?
No,
When are you next available?
June 11th.
June 6th.
June 6th. Okay, well, that's a Monday, not a council meeting. Is that all right?
That's fine.
Okay, June 6th at 9 AM?
Sure.
And as far as public utilities is concerned, Mayor, the Parkland petition is on the agenda for tonight. I guess my question for the solicitor or the fiscal officer is, have we gotten responses from the Parkland residents?
so if you recall, I think the last council meeting, there was gonna be discussion, with the mayor and Mr. Berger, we're gonna have with the additional two property owners that were actually not part of the original petition, who have the property where the top of the dam is located.
Right.
I don't know if that's happened. So nothing has been sent out with respect to the petition. I thought that was sort of on hold until maybe the discussion. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, so, Mayor and I had two meetings with, Mr. Hendricks and Mr. Block, who were running this program. And with respect to the two individuals not part of the 11, the response was that they would not be included in the financial obligation of this project, but that they would provide an easement for access through their property to do whatever work needed to be done on the dam. That was what was reported to us. So we said fine, so that's the 11. The other issue from the group is they're confused as to why they need to put the $33,000 up front. Their understanding was that with a bond issuance, that the bond would go back and capture the expenses from the beginning going forward. So that those expenses for engineering, whatever, would be picked up as part of the bond process. I said to them, what happens if the engineer comes back and says it's $1 million project and you don't want to go forward? And they said, we'll be responsible for all of the fees up until that point, and we can be assessed for those. And I didn't know how that worked. And so the next step is to go back to bond counsel and ask them what happens if they get to a point when they say no. Okay?
That email went to the bond council last week, I haven't had a response yet.
Okay, so that's what we're waiting for, is that response. If bond counsel says yes, it can be done that way, and then they can be assessed. If it doesn't happen, then that's something we need to know, and then we go in a different direction in terms of that proposal letter, the petition, yes.
Chris, doesn't this go against the whole non-refundable thing? We told, we put into the petition that you pay the money, it's non-refundable.
Right. And their position that they came back with was fine. We understand it's non-refundable, but it can be done as part of an assessment as opposed to writing a check up front. That was their position.
I don't know, I mean, again, bond counsel will answer. I guess the point is why would you then go up with the bond to recoup just the cost of the engineer? I don't know, that's why the bond counsel doesn't answer that.
I don't.
As soon as I hear it back.
Well, I don't see us going out for a bond for $33,000. And this position doesn't make much sense to me because we were pretty clear, correct me if I'm wrong, that they need to pay the estimated engineering cost to determine what the project would come to.
For the geotechnical investigation.
Thank you.
Okay. And so the comment, my position was, we'll go ask bond counsel if this can be done. And if it can't be, then we go back and say it can't be. This is the way we have to move forward with this non-refundable upfront payment. So I'm just waiting for bond counsel to say this is what can or can't be done. Okay, you rely on their authority.
So I almost feel like we're getting pushback on $3,000 per household. And they're wondering, hey, can we get our money back through the bond? Which they're gonna pay for over time, right?
Correct.
Okay, I guess we'll see where it goes.
We'll see. That's all, that's.
Yes.
Public Utilities, okay. Questions of the Public Utilities Committee. Grid ordinance and resolution, HR, that's yours.
Okay, this is a motion to table an ordinance repealing ordinance 2022-17 and adopting pay schedules in a tiered system for South Russell Village employees in declaring an emergency.
Second.
This is just a motion to table.
Okay? All right, through all these years, Chris.
Third reading,
Let's make sure, all in favor to table it. Any opposed? Thank you.
sorry. Third reading, and consider adoption of a resolution of appreciation for David Maestros.
Second.
Is that first?
That's the third reading, so Canton.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Lippy.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Berger.
Aye. Third reading, and consider adoption of a resolution of appreciation for Laura LaChapelle.
Second.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Canton.
Aye.
Lippy.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Berger.
Aye. Second reading, and consider adoption of a resolution of appreciation for Gregory Pike.
Lippy, move the readings.
Move.
Move the readings. Move the readings.
Oh, okay. Move to waive readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Canton.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Lippy.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Berger.
Aye.
Move the motion to adopt.
Okay. Move to adopt.
Second.
Canton.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Lippy.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Berger.
Aye.
All right, we're at the bills list.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to ratify the bills of April 29th, 2022 in the amount of $42,040.79. So moved.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Need a roll call.
Canton.
Roll call.
Abstain.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Lippy.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Berger.
Abstain.
You other.
Canton.
I have none.
Kavanaugh.
I was gonna read you some board history that I have written for our 100th, but I've gone ahead and typed it up. And we will be, tell me again, Danielle, when we have to have that.
The Wednesday, so next week Wednesday.
Okay, I'll be on.
Alright, that's all then.
It's all.
Lippy.
No.
Porter.
Just one thing, the next street committee meeting will be June 3rd at 7:30 a.m. at the street commissioner's office, which is the first Monday in June,
7:30.
7:30 a.m. So, great, okay.
Bell.
No.
Berger.
Only, real quick, I'd like to move to go into executive session pursuant to the 121.22 G2 to consider the purchase of, or acquisition of property. That's the only one.
Second.
I would like to invite the solicitor, the fiscal officer, the fiscal auditor, and the mayor to remain.
Canton.
Aye.
Kavanaugh. Lippy.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Berger.
Aye.
We're in executive session now at 9:43. We'll take a 5-minute break and come back here at 9:48.
I sent somebody last time, like, hey, that's it.